ain't no walls across the line. There's a rare few who think outside the box together for the crew. To break the equations, not bound to any rule. Exposing to the world the universe is all view. It takes the talent of the craftsman, it takes the mind of the fool, to make the vision realize energy and matter in a duel. To a break, to a duel. The old man Bills was running through his head. Cheryl probably got it hiding under his bed. Penny up to Annie making power for days. Don't listen to a word that the straight low says. Mike building batteries that power a ship. Victor comes and talking math, that's the water spiral dip. Sean chucking plasma volts a mile long. Sheila on the video making tone chucking prongs. Burning breaking matter, they said it couldn't be done. And to all the people in the chat, I know you're having fun. So it's time to spend your Saturday with the dope and old man Bills.
Hello everybody and welcome. My name is Nathan, otherwise known as Old Man Builds. Guys, it's nice to be back, man. This last couple of weeks has been a real pain for me and a horrifying experience. But thankfully it's calming down now. So waiting on Joe, man. But we'll go ahead and start. We're looking at harmonics in the city. We're looking to see how resonance actually works. And there's some secrets here, guys, that, man, if everybody knew this, it would change the world. So we start to think about this in a simple way. We know harmonics exist. We know that if we go into a church, there's harmonics in there. We know that there's different frequencies at different distances in a church. We've all evaluated it, seen it. We've all watched videos that has to do with light and how it goes through the lead glass and everything, and how there's a different frequency and everything. But you really realize what it's doing? What's up, Joe?
Hey, you ain't got no patience. You just started on up without me. Let her roll. Happy Friday, everybody.
Usually you send me a message, man, and I'll wait.
Yeah, I know. How's everybody?
Man, so we're talking about harmonics, Joe, and we're looking at cities that would be built with harmonics. And this goes back to, they said that before, I believe it was the 1800s, they already had cities that were out there. And they were already harmonically balanced, and they had stuff to pull energy out and already were producing it. Now, some of this stuff, it would be like a lightning tower or something like that. But it goes deeper than that, because some of the generators in there, we don't attach any of that stuff to generators now. So
Right.
If they have generators involved in this, then that's a whole different story.
Yeah, I mean, the old style of building is significantly different than it is now. And there was almost no marked reason as to why those changes were made. And one of the hallmarks of almost all construction, prior to a certain period was the pillars, and certain areas that were much taller, even in a basic structure. So, it's interesting to think that, the types of structures that remained even after we modernized, how those types of resonant harmonics could have played a role in even efficiency levels and things of that nature. It's interesting to think about.
Well, okay, so let's dive into the harmonics part. For those of you who don't know how harmonics works, let's do a little crash course, okay? So let's just take a sine wave, and then we'll loop it inside of another sine wave. So you have one going on top and one going on bottom, and they create little packets. So you have that going, right? In between each one of them is your node, and that's where you're going to find each one of your ratios. So if you say it's 1, then it's one band going all the way across. If you say it's 2, it loads up and goes to 2, and so on and so forth, and it gets bigger, right? So when I say a 1 to 3, you're saying, okay, out of the whole, I have 3 available, right? Right there. So if I say 1 to 4, it's 1 to the 4th, okay? And so on and so forth as it goes out. Now, you get into higher harmonics, okay? And then you can have a multiplier in there of like a 10 or something like that. It has to have a 0 on the end in order for it to work out right. And it'll go like that, but they'll be so far apart, but they're almost in the same harmonic value, okay? It's just a difference in the kilohertz versus hertz. So what happens when you get these things in harmonic resonance? It basically means Your node point, or basically your null point every time, is your beat frequency. So you get 1 and then 2, but for every 1 that goes on, it hits there at another point and it beats. But then it does it on the third one too. But now you're getting 3 beats. And when you get the 3 beats that hit together, energy doesn't cancel, it amplifies. So you're getting a massive amplification going on later down the line. That's why they tell you got to hit the 5th harmonic to get the energy amplification like you're looking for. So that's just a quick crash course on harmonics. So if you put something in resonance and harmonics at a 1 to 3, say you have 2 motors, energy in that system will pick up. So, but then say you put high voltage in a Tesla coil into the harmonic as well, but they're in a multiple of 10. But they're in a short distance from each other, right? But they're in the right harmonic ratio. Then your energy goes up and up again. All you got to do is hit that 5th harmonic to get that Townsend effect to go throughout the entire thing. So now that we understand the harmonic, let's go back to the building. If I build every building in a ratio, and I said to Joe, I want this one in 1 to 2, but I want the next one in 1 to 4 on the same building, just different, whether it's columns, whether it's the tower, and then I go to the dome, right? What happens? I'm amplifying energy. All I need is the air to pass through it to give me that sound, that frequency to get there. Now I can start hitting harmonics based on the building's, the way it's built, I should say. And those of you who don't understand Tesla, let me just give you a crash course on that, and I'll let Joe go off and tell you about this. When you have things that are an equal amount of poundage, remember, Tesla didn't measure everything by the wire count. He didn't measure it by the wire size. He measured it by the pound. So now you take a dome here and a dome here that are equal in weight. You'll get a ratio on those 2 tops. You got to understand why that is. Because you're resonating based on the amount of the copper that's inside of it. It'll have a specific frequency to it every time. So if you think about it in that way, it makes it easier, because most people go, got to be the same shape, got to be the same size. Not necessarily all the time. It just has to be the same weight. So they have to shave off some of the copper on the sides of it in order to get these things to balance. But what happens when you build 1 to 1 harmonic here, 1 to 2 harmonic on the next dome, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, and then your top dome is 1 to 5. You hit all 5 harmonics. The amount of energy that you're pulling out of the atmosphere at that point is a full-blown tornado of energy that comes down in there, and you're going to massively put a bunch in there. We saw this when you do it with simple rings. You could take out rings. As long as you follow the golden ratio and harmonic value, you could put one in the center, then another one out, and another one out, and another one out, and you're going to get the exact same effect. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I mean, what you just said makes a lot of sense why Tesla would use weight, as the benchmark, because if you're using mass as the constant, right now, all of a sudden, everything else becomes your variable, but the end result is going to be the same. So it really cuts down on the inefficiencies, let's say, of gauge, because then as soon as you say gauge, now it's going to be a certain length, right? And that in itself is a restricting factor as to how it could be built out. By using weight, what you realize quickly is that you have only X amount of material, right? So if you're going to use X amount of material in a small scale geometry, right, that's going to be a heavier, a heavier construction, let's just say. Whereas if you're going to build it over a larger area, it's going to be a thinner construction with a larger surface area. But the math has already worked itself out, right? So that's why weight is, a great constant to use, because the others really box you into what you can create with those set parameters. and they may not match the ratios needed, in order to create that harmonic value. Because, the thing that Nathan was talking about, when you go through the harmonics and things are falling into harmonic resonance, one thing that comes out of that is what in music you would call like a vibrato, right? And we've all experienced the vibrato before. It's like even if you're the worst singer in the world, and I certainly know that I pretty much am, you're singing along with a song that you heard 1,000 times, and when you match right exactly where that singer is in that moment, and you're able to hit that tune, you'll see there's a very, very strong vibrational resonance that occurs just between you and that sound that you're receiving. And we've all experienced it before. Um, and that's realistically what you're looking for in these structures generally. So that's base stage stuff though, right? You want your materials to be to be of certain value and in certain proportions and laid out certain ways so it builds up this way. But then once you have it built up, what happens? Well, then you vector it. And that's where the architecture goes from this mathematical proportion and material equation, and then builds up on itself, because now you want to take that energy that is created through those proportional relationships in harmonic resonance, and you want to be able to do something with it, right? So a lot of the finest architecture that's ever existed, stuff that was done during the Renaissance, when they rediscovered the hidden truths that were lost, more or less, they'll attribute a lot of that, from the, rolling out of the Dark Ages before that, but the destruction of the Library of Alexandria, right? And all the lost knowledge that was in there. Well, during the Renaissance, they rediscovered that, then only for the church to roll out and, make sure that it didn't, that they used it to their greatest advantage. That's why if you look at medieval and Renaissance cathedrals, those cathedrals are absolutely, incredible. They follow all those rediscovered laws.
So this kind of goes to why you don't build a city in a brick layout. Some people just think, oh man, they just worked with what they had and they moved around it. You got to understand these things were empty fields when they got to them. And it wasn't just a little hut that they put down. They put down a city. So you're going to find in the architecture, it's going to drive the energy itself. Now, in the older style buildings, before they started tearing them down, they did exactly that. So they would amplify the resonance in those areas. Now, the difference between what they're doing and what we do today is theirs is all in hertz. I don't know if you notice this or not. Every time we turn around, it's in kilohertz, right? Anytime that they want to ban something or change something, they're changing the harmonics and the hertz. They changed it with the 40s, and they screwed up our whole scaling. They did the destructive versus constructive. So it comes down to when wind flows to the city and gives you the movement that you need for the frequency, what happens to the city then if it's harmonically resonant? And in a lot of cases, guys, I don't know if you noticed this, but they've been trying to recreate this exact same thing throughout history in all of the healing places that you go to. They take the glasses, they put some water in the bottom, and they start running the rim of it. They start to put sounds in the background, when you get a massage or something like that. They're trying to do the same thing that they had before subconsciously, even if they didn't understand it when it happened. You see, we have memory in our DNA, and it usually just shows up in simple things like, something changes in our body to adapt to a situation in the environment. But just realize this, that same DNA works for your resonance factor in your body as well. Your chakra is set up in hertz. So if you're going to align your chakra and you're trying to do it in the city. And if the city's available to give you that, then guess what? You're going to stop and enjoy it when it happens, aren't you?
So, you said it just now. They changed the tuning scale, right? And people will say, that doesn't really make that much of a difference, or but mathematically it does.
Yeah.
And once you understand that 440, okay, is a 10 count, okay, that's the divisible of 10, whereas 432 is a divisible of thirds. Okay, then you tie that back to how I've structured the energy movement. Okay, you need to start in the thirds in order to end up with your 10 scale being what is the manifest creation of the two. So it's this step up situation where your beat frequency is in the 10 count of things, but you need to build that up in the thirds, and this is the difference between standard measure and metric. Okay, is that we work off of thirds that build into tenths. See, because just because we work in thirds doesn't mean that it can't be broken down into a tenth, right? It always can, but not the other way around is true. So what you end up with is vastly different proportions based on the same scaling relationships. So it screws it all up 2 ways to Tuesday, because what you want is multiple frequencies in a 9 count, okay, or a divisible of 3, okay, and then you want those multiple frequencies to then have a beat frequency that's in that 10 divisible. That's what the ultimate goal is, you see. But by starting off in tens, it's impossible then to revert backward, and
Right.
that's where all the energy comes from. Is from that step up from 9 to 10.
So just so everybody understands this, 3, 6, and 9. Everybody says it. Everybody repeats it. Do they really understand it? Take
Even
it
people
in.
that think they understand it don't. I'm here to say that, unfortunately.
Take it as a ratio: 1 to 3, 1 to 6, 1 to 9. What do you notice already? It's already in harmonics. It is already in your harmonic scale. So it's already teaching you something. Could the Bible be done the same way because it's in ratios when you turn the pages? There could be something there. I think honestly, what people need to understand, they always ask about what do these things do as far as to your body, and they ask it about Tesla coils and everything else. And Joe and I have both witnessed the fact of you walk into the room, turn it on, you immediately turn it off and walk out and want to vomit. And you've had good days where you turn it on and you say, man, this is outstanding, right? You guys do know it has to do with the pressure in your room and the actual air in your room. So if I wanted to test and see how far plates were apart at that point in time based on the air in my room, I just do a simple spark gap and I measure the distance. And then as soon as I measure the distance of a spark gap, I can actually tell you how far those plates have to be apart at any given time in that room based on the pressure and environment in that room. And it's a good guide. But that's what's going on in the Tesla coil. It's actively interacting with the environment. So the change in pressure in the room, the change in temperature in the room, all affect it in a certain way. You see, that's what the Slayer Exciter does. It tries to resonate with everything in there. But what happens when your buildings do that? Now your buildings are the Slayer Exciter circuit. Now they're the ones that are looking for that first 1-to-1 ratio of the frequency to get to a harmonic value, because the 2s, the 3s, and the 4s are already there along with the 5ths. They just need the Kickstarter. So when the wind comes up and goes through, there's your 1-to-1. it sets it off. Now the whole town becomes resonant. Okay.
Well, not to mention it's working like an active force resonance to a certain degree, right? So if you're in that environment and you're out of tune with it, you're gonna feel unwell, like you said, but or it will force you into resonance. See, you either it can't be both. You will be unwell, or it will bring you into resonance with it. It does it only works that way. Which really kind of says a lot about society in general. Why they would look to congregate and sort of have big community type solidarity, right? Under those circumstances, whereas because it kind of keeps the unlike-minded people out, the people that aren't on that same wavelength out, or it brings them into that wavelength to then make them compatible with where everybody else is, because we definitely have all our own vibrations, right? And when a place is pleasant and it has good energy and good vibes, that's what that means. But we've all been to places with bad energy and bad vibes, and we kind of know what that means too. We've all experienced it, even if so it's not really that outlandish. You just have to kind of attach it to how we perceived it, being unknowing to maybe in that moment what was actually going on. But real quick before we move on, Yanni says, I've always seen it as many things, meaning the 3, 6, 9. He says mostly as to a system, right? The 3, 6, and 9 being one system, and the 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8 being the other. And here's sort of what I have to say to that, because it's a good point that he brings up, and I agree. The initial sequence, okay, 1, 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, and then back to 1 again, right? That is the initiation, the initial fractioning sequence, right? So those fractions, they lead to then a second emergent 3-point system, right? Which then is the 3 and the 6 that light it up, go to that 9. And then that 9 then breaks apart further, right? And it goes into a 2-point third axis that's then emergent, which is the 9 and the 4.5. And realistically, if you then do the math to take into account the fact that it just stepped up on that third layer to that 10 count, what you end up seeing is that it ends up at 4.75, okay, as the last emergent point, the last emergent system, but it's only 1 point. It's 4.75, and the reason it's that is because it's the average of all the systems combined. It's the center of the average of both systems combined. So when you combine the sum of the 9 and the sum of the 10, and then you split it in half, you come up with 475. Now, what's interesting about that is when you map out the 4.5 on the Rodin, spiral math thing, right? Like the Tesla, right, thing. Well, you look at your 4.5 mark and you notice it's not dead center of the of the map, right? So the map is totally in proportions, but where your 4.5 mark is, where everything crosses, okay, is actually at the 4.75 location. That's because even though what comes after is emergent, okay, it manifests itself in the initial configuration as that exact point, which is the proof of the transition between the thirds, the thirds and the 10 count. So
I'll give you another definition, although yours is awesome. If I'm winding a geometry coil, for every forward winding, I need a backwards winding. So if I took 24 pins and I said 12, go 1 through 12 right here, 1 through 12 right here, I'm going to get a backwards wind. And what that is while you're building one vortex, you're building the other at the exact same time.
Yep.
And sometimes we don't understand dimension correctly, and we probably should do better. That's how geometry coils work. You're building one dimension as you're building another dimension inside of it. And as you do it, you're building a double vortex into it. Now you can either build that vortex in to cave in or to hold in. And that's up to you in your geometry winding. If you want to hold in all of the energy and keep it in the center, well, then geometry, you have to use it in order to do that, to create the vortex that holds it in the center like a diamond. If you want it to go out just like two V's, then that's the way you do it. So there's always a wind and a counter wind to it when you do something like that. And there's a specific reason why with a specific number pattern and direction that works in them. Just so we understand that Rodin coil is more of a flow of energy. It tells you where the energy going. Most people that talk about donuts go like this. And this is how their winding pattern goes. Well, the problem with that is it doesn't do anything. It has to curve up and come back around and go down because it's a visualization of energy is what it is. And you're putting energy into it in that manner in a Rodin coil. Let's get back to the cities and residents. Why would they huddle together? So let's talk about the beat frequency and how this works, okay? The beat frequency is always in hertz, and it's always an amplifier. So when you start thinking about it, where is your body on this whole range, right? Some people sell little necklaces that will knock out anything at 10 hertz. They think it's bad for you, okay? So what is it that's going on? Well, you see, once you get past the skin effect and you get into the actual body, now you start messing with things, okay? What hurts your lungs at? What hurts your brain at, okay? What hurt is your heart at? You need to find out all these things if you're going to align them, right? But you can't align them without something that allows you to align them. You see, normally you do this in meditation, but if I took a Slayer exciter that wants to resonate with anything, I can align all of them very easily. So what happens when my buildings become my circuit? You see, that's what's going on here. Your buildings are becoming your circuit. They're becoming the Slayer Exciter circuit. They want to resonate with everything. By huddling together, you all match the same frequencies at the same time in that same area. If it happens to be domed, that's even better because then it's a chamber. It's a chamber of resonance that you got going on, repeating the same patterns all the time. Now, they're not the exact same number. They, like I said, they're in ratios 1 to 1, 1 to 1, 1 to 3, 1 to 6, 1 to 9, and so on. But you get the point. It's basically putting you in a harmonic balance that you weren't in before. And you won't be after that. Because if you put it in for too long, it's destructive to the human body. If you do it for a short burst, a couple of minutes at a time, it's constructive. If you want to control that in buildings, all you got to do is control the airflow. So as a gust of wind hits a set of buildings, you know exactly how it's going to flow throughout all the other buildings. And if the gust of wind isn't hard enough, it can't flow through the buildings at all. This is a masterpiece in understanding geometry and the way that it works. You have to know specifically what does what. That's why you see buildings being torn down. That if they don't want that in your city, they will rip down all the old structures. They'll start replacing domes with a bunch of brick. They'll start putting up crappy rooftops instead of keeping the copper that'll last forever up there. You'll start seeing major changes in there because they don't want you to have this. Why? Because anybody who knows anything about meditation or anything knows that your lifespan seems to be better than the average person who sits here and fills up on a cholesterol-filled diet. That's just the way it works.
Well, it's and you bring up some really good points. It's it. You think it's a coincidence, first of all, that the people that built all these structures that we're talking about, that they They were Freemasons. You know, do you think that it's coincidence that for thousands of years before anything that we're talking about now, right, that they would bring in hyper specific materials from hundreds of miles away to locations to arrange them in a certain order? You know, it's not necessarily that the material that they're bringing in has specific properties itself. Okay, it's that the material that they're bringing into the specific location in the proportions and the arrangement that they're making have the correct harmonic balance with the area that they've chosen, which is oftentimes right along these ley lines that they've drawn out arbitrarily in some cases. Okay, I'm not giving full blown credence to ley lines, but when you look at the structures that do exist along the ley lines, what you end up realizing is that it's consistent and the same. And you're looking at granites and limestone. And even Nathan and I and many other people have been very quick to look at like the pyramids, for instance, and point to the granite and the fact that the granite used is specifically very high in quartz as opposed to feldspar, you know, and you know that there is probably a piezoelectric effect that was the purpose for choosing it. And I don't disagree with that necessarily, but what if that isn't even the main component in choosing that material? Like, it happens to be maybe a positive byproduct of it, but the material itself is just, what's needed to bring in that particular harmonic that they're looking for in that area. And I think that starts to make a lot of sense. And especially with something like the pyramid, because if you look and they're showing these deep chamber tunnels and stuff now, multiple of them, that go far, far down. Well, the frequencies that are going to come off of that and bring the structure into that specific resonance. Got to remember where granite forms. Granite forms right at the exact layer where the mantle and all the molten, as I like to call it, undetermined gobbledygook. Okay, they'll tell you that it's made of this, it's made of that. Okay, unless you've been able to run spectroscopy on actual, magma that's in the mantle while it's still in its mantle form, you don't know what the hell it is, and don't tell me you do, because once it solidifies, it's already solidified. Based on what it, not what it is, but rather what conditions it's set in. Which is why when you pull magma out of, when you look at like the magma that comes out of a volcano, for instance, right, which comes from the mantle, well, the conditions in which it settles in, it most of the time ends up either like pumice stone or like obsidian glass, right? But that's the same exact shit that makes granite somewhere else, which is a whole entire different set of elements and crystal habits. See what I mean? But the point that I'm trying to make is that the granite is formed at that layer. Okay, that's at a very specific resonance. If you're going down way, 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 way down, where the vibration that you're bringing up, okay, is similar to where it was formed at that base layer, and then you make your structure out of it, you're going to be amplifying it immediately. That was the point I was trying to make. And then I got off on my tangent because I realized how fucking stupid it is that they think that every element that's on Earth is all that'll ever exist. That's absolute retardation. So, anyway.
I think my opinion was they took the granite because how flat they could make it. It makes a consistency level in your frequency. Bouncing off certain walls that are completely flat versus something that's a bumpy surface makes a very good consistent wavelength within the room. So if anybody knows anything about this, guys, I just want to make sure you understand this. The pyramids are capacitors. So they're basically an earth capacitor. Same thing with Wardenclyffe. Same thing with your little lightning stick that's up in the air. Because of the way the earth works, you're in a giant capacitor. You have high voltage at the top. You have basically a battery at the bottom so that it's magnetism that's going on down in there. And that's a whole different story on how the layering works. But the closer you get it to the sky, the closer you can get to it. And then you get to Tesla's radiant energy. What he tried to do, he tried to take the energy from the sky and the energy to the ground and put it into a capacitor and pull out the center plate between the two capacitors. And that would give you the energy. So we know that anything put up that high in the sky with that big of an antenna sitting on it is a capacitor. And all you have to learn how to do is pull it out. It's free energy all day long. It is completely free. But let's get back to the cities and how they work, because when you get into resonance, they say that you cannot make extra energy in resonance. And I got to clear this up. No, 1-to-1, you cannot make extra energy out of resonance. However, when you get into 1-to-2, 1-to-3, or 1-to-4, you can couple capacitance together with a very low loss and a high amount of energy that stays within. So what do I mean by that? So if I put out 4 Tesla coil number 2s in a geometry pattern, and I take a driving coil 2 foot from it, and I get it started, and then I have the energy at 15 volts, and I bring it all the way down to 3 volts in my driving coil. Yet the amount of energy within those other coils has energy that stays in it. Why is it staying there? Because it coupled it between each coil and the air itself. It no longer was a coupled to ground as a capacitor. It used the air itself as a capacitance. So now you can understand, if I have that going on and I go to a city and I have buildings that are harmonically resonant to one another, what starts to happen there? Well, it starts to build a pattern. And you start to see between one and the other, you have the air itself working as the energy source inside of it to hold in this capacitance. You see, it's like Angkor Wat. You always see the center tower and you have 4 towers out from it. They're equal distance in every way. It's a mathematical precision that they did. If you start at the center as a driving coil, then the 4 coils around it, or rooftops as you would say them in that situation, will be harmonically balanced in a harmonic ratio. Now you get out to the outer ones, there's what, 8 now? So you're building harmonics in that. Just because it's square and not circle, it doesn't really matter that. It matters the distance they're specifically apart, and then exactly how much energy goes in from the driving one and what you're getting out of the next one. Now, they say, well, you're at an energy loss when you get to the ones out there. Not necessarily. You're only at an energy loss when you screw up the geometry. That's when things start to get bad. That's why wiring coils in a geometric pattern works way better than it does in maybe just an off-wall pattern or whatever. When you get that thing wrong, you miss the harmonic. But when you get it right, it's very precise and it's very powerful. See, Tesla coils are here and there until you put them in the correct geometric pattern. Then they start coupling capacitance very well. Now you can start to pull more energy. So why is there more energy in it now? It's because the beat frequency does not dissolve. It keeps multiplying. Every time you hit those beats, it gets a higher level of the beat. So you get a single beat, you get a double beat, you get a triple beat, you get a quadruple beat. Just understand that that's going on in these systems that are going on in there. So it's an amplification factor to each one of them because they're all in a resonance band. Just understand what a resonance band is here. Every frequency that can be had available in that band that can be set into resonance is right there. What happens on the sides of it? On this side, there's nothing. It builds up here to a peak, then drops right off. Okay? Then it builds up again and gets to a peak and then drops right off. I've had coils where I can pull 5 resonance bands out of them and you can find the harmonics in that coil just like that. And if you set each
Well,
one of
that,
them
that
in
is the
there,
harmonics. That is the
yeah,
harmonics.
well, yeah,
Because
that's what
I
I
mean,
mean.
unless if you're dealing with something that you inadvertently created that's tuned to something that's prime, you're going to have bands, right? But even something's prime is only prime once, right? So like,
Yeah,
you could still double that up, or or find a something that's ultimately going to be harmonically consistent, but it's just not going to meet the same patterns. So that's why certain numbers work and others don't. But you bring up a lot of good points again. As this seems to be my phrase this episode, because you really are. But one thing I want you to think about with what Nathan's saying is waveform interaction doesn't all work the same, right? So if you think about it, right, when they put weather stations and up, they have to space the weather stations and time the weather stations, okay, in accordance with their scan rate. Okay, and that's important. Scan rate, right? They're putting out radar, Doppler. They're looking for Doppler effect. They're looking for all these different things. And how do they do it? They do it pulse modulation with with sweeping. Okay, so it's in motion. What does that mean? That means that you have vector directional propagation. All right. Whenever you have focus directional vector propagation, you run into huge waveform interference circumstances. Now, if you have something rather that puts out its waveform 360 degrees out, right? Well, that's running on a scalar vector. Okay, it's outward on a plane. Now, when you do that, like with a Tesla coil, okay, where the field is built out, concentrically, all right, and evenly. It has no scan or sweep. It's just there in concentric circles, right? As far as the diffusion boundary zones go. Nathan showed this to you before. You walk with a light, it goes, it starts to light up, bang, all of a sudden it lights up really, really bright, right? It's going to start to pull it. It doesn't really change. And then all of a sudden you hit this next zone and it's bang, it's brighter, right? You've seen it. And that's because it doesn't build out in the level of diffusion like you think it would, which means that now if you take something that's potentially resonant in within resonant harmonics of it, and you place that then within that field, okay, so long as it has that same ability to meet that geometry of a 360 degree propagation, what you're going to find is that you don't lose, we'll call it bandwidth, I guess, right? You don't really lose the radiant energy put off by the initial coil to the second coil. However, it's inducing the resonance in it, which then in turn is then putting out the effect further 360 degrees, and you're not getting negative interference off of this relationship between the two coils, even though that their frequency signals cross. They actually feed one another, rather than the other way. So the more you add, the further the reach, and then the more the gain. It's not that it's being created, but it's like a radio, right? See, a radio tower does the same thing. It puts out the signal 360 degrees. Well, what do you know about a radio? Well, you could have one day, 500 people within a small area tuning into the radio and have good signal, right? But then the next day, maybe it's the World Series or something is being broadcast from this particular tower. You might have 7 million people in the same exact area that are listening to that station at once, and they're not getting degraded signal just because so many other people are capturing that signal. And that's the idea, and that's the point. Also, you got to remember that anything that works as a receiver antenna also acts as is capable of acting as a transmission antenna as well. which means that when you have your radio then tuned in to a specific frequency, that antenna, okay, may not transmit back all the way with enough energy, right, to the source, okay, but there is actually, because of just how physics works, right, there's always going to be like some type of capture, okay, and send back out both of the signal itself, but also of what your whole entire system picks up. So if the speaker works to put out sound, it can also capture sound as well. So any ambient sound that's in the area ultimately affects the waveform to the smallest unnoticeable degree, right? And the movement of the speaker is actually information that's then backtracked through the radio system and then put back up into the airwaves, which means that anything that you've ever said around any piece of electronics has basically been put into the ether. It's just like as a long waveform. Just something to think about, but what does that mean? That means that the more people that listen, actually, there's a small bump in the reception for everybody else, and a small bump in the reach of the overall antenna itself and its reach. So,
you know, Joe, it's funny they try to discount the ether. You know, nothing holds together without energy, and when you have gas that we know we live in, it's got to be held together by energy. We know that. And then they tell you all about the energy at 100 volts per meter as you go up. How do you deny an ether when they keep telling you all the evidence about it? Like, what is the ether? It's basically just the energy that binds everything in the earth. That's it. That's the ether. And if you go outside the earth, it still binds the energy out there. People say space is dark, so there's no energy. That's the furthest thing from the truth.
no, right. The ether is, and I've defined it before, and you didn't agree with me at the time, but you know, the words you just said show that how much
Yeah,
you
I
do agree
probably
with
do
me.
now.
Yeah, is that it has it has total dimensional permeability. Okay,
Yes.
total dimensional permeability of the ether. What does that mean? That means that it is everywhere and inside of and of everything. You are made of it. Okay, and everything is made of it. And what is it? Well, it is actually, in my opinion, right? Higher dimensional geometry and energy, and its ability to enter into this dimension based on its anchoring relationship to matter. It's anchored to matter because matter puts pressure on the manifold. So because we are inside of that upper dimension, right? We are pressure on it. We are actually what's pushing it out. So if we didn't exist, it would just rush in because it's a pressure differential, right? And that's why when I talk about energy exchange and I mentioned the dimensionality of it and so on, several things I've said, which is if you are able to reduce the etheric pressure to a more ambient state with it itself, you've lowered the resistance and therefore increased the amount of potential energy that you can extract. Okay. Basically almost to an unlimited state at that level. Okay. And that's why physics breaks once you get down to those huge low resistance levels, as like this is how you deal with low temperature superconductors and the like, right? But there's this other thing that we do, and we do it all the time, and we define it in all sorts of ways, but we failed, I think, to be able to define it as it needs to be, which is how do you have energy production at all? Well, the answer is that you need to be able to emulate the upper dimensional geometries, okay, with energy in order to then create a pathway for that reduced resistance. So by creating those upper dimensional geometries, like a spherical toroid, right? All of a sudden you've created conditions where at a certain point of it, you've created an axis that does not exist here. Okay. And once you create that axis that doesn't exist here, but it is here, okay, then you now have an access point to that dimensional energy. And when we talk about null zone, or we talk about all these like words that we throw out there, that is it. That's the ground state energy well that we have. Why ground state energy well? Because all the energy is ultimately going to return to that, and it wants to return matter to it as well.
Well, okay, let me just clarify this because I want to get back to the buildings and stuff.
Yeah, sure.
It
plays a role, by the way. And once you get more into the buildings, I'll tell you why.
The darkness in space has energy in it, all over the place. See, this is the thing when they start talking about dark matter and stuff like this. Understand that the space is full. We come in with basically a beam of light, hit something, you transform it, create a condition in the environment, which creates a solar system and the sun immediately. That sun will then put out little satellites from it and create the solar system. This happens within days. This is not some event that takes forever to happen. It happens within days. We see it in plasma experiments all the time. And not ones that only last for 2 seconds. We can run these things all day and see what they do. Just understand that all that's emergent. So basically, there's energy in the entire solar system as you look at it. You see black, but that's a light spectrum. Okay, we've shown plenty of experiments where the black shows up as black soot. It's a different form of black, but that's what space is. You think it's void of energy. It can't be. You see, that's the problem here. People aren't understanding this. It cannot be void of energy. And why is that? Because every planet follows the sun. And as soon as you move the sun, the planet moves. So as soon as you see the orbit, you wonder why it seems off. It's because the sun is tilted and it moves in the way it wants. But that changes the planet's orbit. That means that there's a connection between the sun and each planet. There's a zoning going on there. We've shown this when we did the RAV. You'll see it burst out in energy. You see boom, 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 boom. It looks white. But the thing is, the energy was always there. All we did was amplify it to show you the white zones. That was it. The energy's always been that distance out from it, and you can check it. So just understand this. Your solar system's full of energy. There are no spots in it without it. But then again, so is Earth. That's why they call it an ether. It's everywhere. It's the energy that binds everything, which is pretty simple because we already know how to use it. That's the thing here. We already know how to use that energy. Tesla already told us what it was. Okay? What the problem is we got 50,000 confusing words for no reason. You say, oh, it's quantum. It's quantum. Hey, I got an idea for you. How about you cut out the quantum crap and all your questions? And why don't you just make sense of it in a coherent way? Okay? It's this simple. The energy's there, the energy amplifies, and we get the photon effect. That's as simple as it gets. I didn't need quantum to describe that, okay? I didn't need to know that, quantum of an atom has to be in gigahertz or higher in order to understand that. Well, that's because it's so goddamn small. But when it gets bigger, it shows up in hertz levels where you can see it visibly with your eyes. So, yeah, no, not a problem. Do I have to go quantum to tell you that? Not any bit whatsoever, because it's not a question in my mind. Look, all this stuff is explainable, but the problem with physics is because I just said that, there's probably part of the audience right now. Gotta have quantum, gotta have quantum. What's the problem? You're arguing with me over worthless bullshit instead of seeing the real truth. The energy exists no matter the size. It all depends on how you work it out. The energy's always there. It hasn't changed. It's just been compressed differently. The geometry changed in it. You went from flat planes over to a spherical form, so the geometry changed. So the energy looks like it changed, but it didn't. It just compressed in a different way. That's all that's going on here. We're using gigantic words and a bunch of worthless crap to describe the same system over and over and over again because people try to define it in the wrong math. You
Right.
can't
Listen,
define geometry and algebra. It doesn't work.
when you send a signal anywhere, okay, or any type of propagated energy, as soon as it leaves a zone of interaction, it has already been received everywhere that it'll ever reach instantly.
Yes.
Okay, that's really the answer. Like, now, how long it takes to be received, okay, is not an equation like they're proposing as much, although the math might not be wrong. Okay. The idea, though, is that we have certain dimensional geometric limitations when it comes to this energy itself and how it moves. So what you end up becoming subject to, okay, is what we would view as the Planck scale, the biggest and the largest. I mean, the largest and the smallest, right? Well, in there is the fastest and the slowest, right? Something doesn't move or something moves as fast as possible, right? We perceive it as that geometric dimensional limitation as it moves as fast as possible. Okay. And that's why we don't see there being any deviation in it based on time dilation or anything else, that the speed in which it moves we see as a constant, is because it's just showing you that it's, where it's going to be received dimensionally is at the maximum threshold of what we're capable of experiencing here and measuring here. But the fact is that in reality, the actuality of it is that was instant, right? It actually made it there instantly. We just took time to catch up to it.
Mm-hmm.
And once you start seeing things like that, you start seeing things for what they really are. And I've said it before, and Nathan was touching on this before he went off on what he did. But this is also, it's always been there, right? This is something that we've all experienced. And I made the joke a long time ago, and I meant it, but it was really dick of me to make this joke. It was like, oh yeah, you want 0-point energy? Flip your light switch. because the reality of it is this: it's all 0-point energy. And I want to describe something quickly, okay, that's very easy to understand, that I've said in the past, but I'm going to reword it a little bit, right? And it's, well, any old generator, okay, where you have magnets and the magnets turn, permanent magnets, and the magnets turn around a coil, okay, and then out of that, you have electricity. Okay, cool. Well, that's 0-point energy. Let me explain. You have a permanent magnet. What's a permanent magnet? We've discussed this before. It doesn't move. It's not an electromagnet. It has no flow state. Okay? It has a fixed geometry of energy that's trapped in a grid pattern. And because that grid pattern of trapped energy emulates the upper dimensional geometry, emulates it, you get the magnetic component out of it. So it is a magnet, okay? But it's missing something. It's missing the motion because it's fixed. Because the reason it's magnetic is because it's emulating an upper dimensional geometry.
Mm-hmm.
But then what happens when you take that emulated extra dimensional geometry and you add an extra axis of motion to it, or extra axis of dimension to it via motion? Well, now you've not only emulated that geometry, you've brought that extra dimension in, which because it's not spinning at the high enough rate, you would have to spin it very, 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 very fast, like beyond probably the mechanical stress failure rate, to actually open it up to where there's no etheric resistance. Okay. But what you've done is you've greatly reduced the etheric resistance, which allows you then to bring in a potential. But now, because your potential is in that in that spinning magnetic field, and there's something there to capture it, hence the coil, right? Well, we know what happens when that potential comes into, um, a relationship with a copper coil. It's going to ultimately revector that potential energy into a current state. So all you're doing is you're just rebuilding the upper dimensional geometries and adding axes to what's already there, and then that reduces the resistance, therefore increasing the energetic exchange rate. And when you do that properly, wham, bam, thank you, it's electricity. And we've been told, oh, magnetic flux. What the fuck is magnetic flux? Yeah, if anybody here could tell me what magnetic flux is, I'll fly down and I'll shake your hand. And I'll buy you a bag of cheeseburgers.
I want to say thank you to the listeners out there, man. Very much. Thank you very much.
Right on, Ulysses. Very generous as always, brother. Thank you.
Taking care of us, man. So, hold on. I want to add something to that, Joe, that people aren't really understanding. And I'll do it in the way of harmonics so that you understand what I'm saying. You know that harmonics is in the value. You can see it in the frequency it puts out. So if I showed you the inside of the rabbit and I said the inside's green and then I got a pink layer and I got a lighter pink layer and then it changes color again, what am I telling you? I'm telling you that the frequency has changed in each one of those zones, right? Well, now let's bring it back to Joe's analogy with the magnets. What happens when I start using different materials? Say I didn't like my magnet in ceramic. Maybe I wanted it in aluminum. Okay. What value does that bring? People go, well, there's not enough energy in that. Well, are you the capacitor that decides that? Because you're looking at an oscilloscope telling me the wrong answer. You see, this is why harmonics matter and why different materials matter. Because to you, you don't see the different material as being better than the iron. You say, oh, the vector direction doesn't line up fast enough. It puts off a different energy form. So if I want to accumulate a harmonic pattern based on materials, I need to choose the correct materials in the correct order to pull off that same pattern as I spin this. As I spin this, I can put it into a harmonic. When I put it into a harmonic, I can get a runaway. I basically created all the harmonic zones inside of it. Now I can get a runaway. That's why you need to know this, because it doesn't matter what the oscilloscope is. The oscilloscope is basically set to tell you the amount of energy in iron. Let's just face it, that's what it does. When you go to copper or you go over to copper, it does pretty good. I should say when you go to aluminum, it's piss poor. Okay? When you get over to another metal beyond that, absolutely horrifying. It looks like there's no energy, but your capacitor fills up twice as fast. You got to put them in order in that resonance, but then also in order based on that harmonic. That's why you put different sized tubes in the ground, and then they make that harmonic for you. But it's the same thing with the magnets and the material. You have to do it that way. Let's get back to the buildings a little bit so that we understand this, guys.
Well, yes, buildings, real quick with that. Can I build on it a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we talked about before how you have all these buildings and they're built in harmonic resonance, not exact resonance, harmonic resonance with one another. Well, that obviously gives not only a link between them and an amplification, but it also has large implications for other structures within that area. And the reason for that is if you just put anything up any old way, and it's not hitting those harmonics while they're that amplified, if you build something that's in dissonance with it, it will actually fail. Okay, it will structurally fail even if you follow regular guidelines and rules, because the entire area in that case is at a certain rate. And if it can't fall in, it becomes under mechanical stress. Okay, and that mechanical stress will lead to its ultimate failure. Now, there are ways to build up around that, right? Like if you build something out of heavy stone, whatever, it's going to take a lot more time for that to fail in that case. But being in that dwelling or building or whatever is actually going to be less than pleasant, because you're going to have a whole bunch of dissonant oscillation that you're going to be experiencing. And because you're coming from an area that's where you're in saturation with the rest of the system, right? Now you're entering this one area that is totally incoherent with it, and you're not going to want to be in there anyway. So that means that everything then has to be built within some semblance of the overall resonance, which is why most of the structures look very, very similar, and you had very little variation in the architecture. It's why you see that they use the same types of measurements and materials over and over again. It's why you see that certain civilizations simply had their style of architecture that was used where across the board, rich or poor, huge public building, or government type place, where elites would go. All of it would be within reason of the same architecture, materials, and construction for that reason. For that reason, because you just couldn't have. And then they also have to have these higher tall spires. Okay, every spaced out every so often, in order for this to work at any large scale, which means that they were actually city planning around this stuff, knowing the maximum distances that these taller structures had to be. And if you noticed, in almost all old civilizations, what you would randomly see is how come they have all these tall, seemingly useless frigging towers in the middle of nowhere? It's like nobody really knows what it was used for, but it was there. It was always just a tower, off the side of town. Well, yeah, that's because they didn't have a big structure put up there, but they had to keep that that resonance going. They needed to extend it out. They basically put like a Wi-Fi bump, booster, kind of out there for that signal to keep going.
So let me just say something so people understand this. We talk about different systems, and I want you to understand it's the same principle. The serial generator. I can never say the word and name of that thing right.
Oh, hold on 1 second, Nathan. I got to quit out and join back because I got a phone call and it killed my audio, and Ulysses mentioned that in the chat. So let me back in 1 minute, okay?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So let's talk about this generator for a minute and why people can't seem to get it right. They're not following the right rule. You see, I'm telling you about harmonics, and I'm telling you how they build out, and they're not doing it. They're not seeing it. They're seeing magnets that run around in a circle. Well, what's the problem in that? If you don't understand the harmonic value of it, it's completely worthless to try to build it. You're building one frequency and then the next frequency and the next frequency, and they have to be in a harmonic balance. You see, that's the key to anti-gravity. You have to be in harmonic balance. So if you're not in harmonic balance, you don't have anti-gravity. If you're not in harmonic balance, the serial generator's junk. Okay? It's teaching you something. It's teaching you about harmonics and how they work. And when it does that, that's how the earth works. You think because it's spherical that you would not, do the same thing because it's not on a flat plane. But it does. It does it in spheres instead of doing it on a flat plane or a disc. All of this stuff is tied in together. Once you realize it and understand this, then the next level is available to you. Until you understand the simple under this simple part. If you don't use harmonics, you will not have anti-gravity. If you do not use harmonics, you will not have energy amplification in your system. If you run a whatever setup, just check your card at the door and say that I checked in and got paid for no reason. Okay? Just understand that. That's the way it goes. It's a go, no go situation. It's not any other way. Either you can get to the point where you can understand the harmonics or you can't. And we're not making it hard for you. I'm making it very easy. If I told you 94 kilohertz, then I told you 98 kilohertz, then I told you 102 kilohertz, you go, well, there's a pattern right there, buddy. Now I could take that pattern and put it in the wavelength, right? What happens? All of the colors change in the wavelength. Okay, that's cool. But what happens is I pulled a ratio on every single one of them as well. And you go, wow, it just falls into line now, doesn't it? Well, that's kind of the point here. So when we get to buildings and stuff, just understand this. When we put them in harmonic ratios and you build them in ratios, then guess what happens? Everything around you starts to change because then it's in the energy of the earth. Understand this. I'm just going to say this out there and then we can go wherever we want. The reason there's a time dilation field in the earth is because the core is in hertz and we are in megahertz by the time we get out to the outer atmosphere. When you see the fact that it's only, a few minutes for every couple rotations of the earth that they're off, understand when you get to the core of the earth compared to the outside of the earth, there's a massive difference. And if we know anything about spherical energy, it goes like a magnet. Take a sphere and rotate it as a magnet. You'll find the energy comes out, cuts off, goes, cuts off, goes, cuts off. But we all say the Earth's an electromagnet. Well, what do you think's going on? You're going to have parts that go out, cut off, go out, cut off, go out, cut off. That means you have zoning going on inside the Earth. Now, just understand this. The Earth is like a big piece of cheese, right? It's got holes in it everywhere, okay? Like Swiss cheese. It has pockets and caverns. Think about getting down to a different level in the earth. Say we pass through that boundary zone, which, by the way, the Russians found when they dug into the earth and they went 20-something miles down and it sounded like the sounds of hell. Well, that's pretty much what your magnetosphere sounds like. You get through that, and how would you do it? Through lava tunnels, because that's the natural pathway for everything to be blocked off. You get through there, you're in a different part of the earth. Could it very well be that there's spots in there big enough for a population to grow? Absolutely. It's not out of the understanding of physics itself. It's all in there. Whether you believe it or not, it's there.
It might not be outside of the understanding of physics, but like most things we discuss, it's certainly not in the text of physics.
It's better than, hey, it's better than saying we live in a matrix, or, hey, I got one for you. Time doesn't exist. Okay, give me a minute. Just give me a minute. We'll see if time exists.
Well, I think the better way to put that same exact thing is that everything that you experience, okay, absolutely exists, including time and matter and all these things, okay, and your relationships and the things you do and the things that matter. All of it actually really does exist. But that said, when you look at it bigger picture, it is not what you think it is in actuality. And does that matter? Well, to many people it doesn't. But to many people it does. And to the people that do, often it's outside of the reach of your ability to understand and perceive, because it truly actually is. But when you start to understand these higher systems, and these higher processes and sort of what makes up the reality, what's weird is it does actually make what you experience seem like actually this isn't what's real. What's real is what it's made of and what's beyond, and that is true. But the fact is that by virtue of experiencing it, it matters. And saying that something matters and matter being the same exact word is non-coincidental. Okay, because matter matters, and I don't know. I think so. You're talking about all the processes under the earth and all this stuff, and I talked before about how the elements were not just all dumped here at one time. This is what we have to work with, and it goes into magma slosh and comes up at some point in another as this or that or the next thing, being totally untrue. Do you want to see what I found when I went mining?
Oh yeah. Give me a second. Go ahead and get it. Ulysses, I want to say thank you.
Me, but you have like the pictures of it, so.
Oh yeah. I'll put them up. Ulysses,
So
I want to say thank you, man. Very, very cool, brother. You gave us another sticker, man. I appreciate it, my friend.
Yeah, it's awesome, dude. Thank you. So first of all, I want to give a big thank you to anybody that contributed to my long-term campaign of getting me out to go mining. Last year got a little tumultuous on me at times, so I didn't have the conditions really to get out as much as I would have hoped. But this year I already have multiple digs booked, and I was able to get out this past weekend, and it was a great day. And a lot of what we were saying, like I was able to crawl inside it. So here's a picture of just the place when you pull in. And, you check in that little cabin right there. And then, I drive my truck down to the mine. And yeah, that's one of the somethings I found. So that's pretty good. And then there was two of them. And that's it. So I'll show you some of the stuff that I found.
Things are huge, Joe.
Oh yeah. Oh, just wait.
Yeah, look at that.
Here, put me on the camera for a sec. Up big. Oh wow! Look at this guy here. Look at. How's that for quartz?
Oh yeah, baby.
Yeah, that's the good stuff right there, man. Look at that tip.
That's amazing, man. Look at
That's
that.
something else, isn't it?
Oh, I'm gonna enjoy seeing you put light to these things.
Oh yeah.
That's just awesome, man.
We got this one. I don't know where the camera is. There we go. You know what? I have one of those phones where the camera's hidden on the front.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I don't ever know where it is. But yeah, these things they're big. They weigh a couple pounds a piece. I mean, this one's very nice. Don't get me wrong. And probably looks better. And I mean, it looks great generally, but I mean, it looks good in this shot here. But this one is really, really something else. And I know this is like the camera will never show it right, but it's actually got like a phantom smoky crystal in there where you could see like a crystal inside of a crystal. Unfortunately, they were broken, and I couldn't find all the pieces. And I didn't break them. I mean, they're 500 million years old. Anything could happen. But okay, you see right there?
Well, I'm seeing the crystal inside of it already.
Yeah, you can see the crystal inside the crystal.
Nice.
But, I mean, this is really rad. So yeah, I mean, those were the big finds, and I kind of have a good technique and idea down now as to exactly how to find some of this stuff. But I did have a couple other neat finds. So I found a couple pieces of this. I got as much of it out as I could. This is Bixbite, I'm pretty sure. So that's like a copper ore. And it's got like chalcopyrite all over it, which, they call it fool's gold, for a reason. Because let me tell you, when you break open what looks like vein quartz,
Mm-hmm.
and then all you see is literal gold covering like a whole ton of surfaces of it, you're like, oh my God. And I mean, it is really, really gold. I mean, it's not showing it, but like all right here, that whole entire thing is gold.
Oh, we see it.
Yeah, but it's it's chalcopyrite. So I mean, I got a couple pieces of this. I found some really cool calcite, which usually I wouldn't bring home, but a few pieces were really cool. This piece I'm going to use as like a stand for another crystal because that's pretty awesome.
Nice.
But all this stuff pretty much came out of the same hole. Yeah, here's another piece of that Dixite. This piece is really, really nice. As far as that's like, it's just like beautiful to be on a shelf. It's like blue, green, black, white. It's got that little, and then it's gold on the side, like all that pyrite. Yeah, really, really cool piece. And then I got this behemoth, which like I considered not keeping even after I brought it home, but then I was like, whatever. Let's see if I can't lift this up. Yeah, I have it on the stand, except it's not like fixed in there anyway. So it's like a specimen of calcite, but it's really, really earthy. Right? And you'll see in the inside's all crusted, just like crusted with dolomite and calcite and quartz, and it's got a little Herkimer diamond sticking right off the side there. You see that?
Nice.
And then I had this piece of dolomite or something, dolstone, that has all sorts of Herkimer diamonds in these pockets, and I was using that as a stand for it. So I thought that was pretty cool. Like, hold on, maybe I'll be brave and I'll let it go for a second.
Ulysses was asking, is that leached copper oxide?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what that thick spite is. It's all copper ore. Here, you get an idea now. I'm holding it. Thing weighs a ton. But you can see, like,
I can see it.
Yeah.
Looks really cool, Joe.
And yeah, actually it's very, very transparent, like all this stuff back here. So I'm playing around with the idea of like putting like an LED light underneath it to shine through it, so it'll light this whole entire thing up.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, and it's a little ugly, kind of, but like it's like raw earth, and I just think that's pretty damn cool. But yeah, that's like what Earth forms, man. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome. You got so many crystals in one piece. Yeah, we can see it. We can also see your wooden structure giving us the finger.
Oh, you like that guy? Yo, that's always there. I'm just usually sitting in front of it.
Oh. I love it. You don't pick it up right away until Joe shows you a crystal right next to it.
Yeah, that's always done there.
We're going to look at it every time now.
I was like at Michael's, like buying stuff for art one time, like years and years ago. I was like, oh, I'll get some ink or brushes or whatever I needed. And then I saw like the hands thing that you could put the hand however you want it, so you could draw the figure of a hand, like with all the segments and stuff. I was like, oh, I'm buying that. And it only needs to know one gesture.
Nothing else.
That's it.
Oh my God. We had a guy in the chat that was saying he doesn't believe in time dilation. Let me just throw something out there for you guys. Frequency equals 1 over time. I like to think of it as frequency equals I over T, which is energy over time. But I digress. 1 over time is fine and good enough. What does that mean? If you have hertz at the center of a sphere and you get to the outside and you have megahertz, you have a time difference. How long does it take a hertz wave to populate? Forever. How long does it take a megahertz wave to propagate? Very quickly, okay? Where you can't even see it. So what's going on in there? There's different times going on in there. Now add into the fact that you're basically zoning this stuff in energy. Now you're breaking it down to wavelengths and energy, and you got time that's at a different time than the outside of the time. So that means each zone of time that's in a harmonic is different than the next range of zones on the outside of that. Guys, that's what time dilation is. It's understanding wavelengths. So when you show you the little dots that you see inside the RAV, and you see them just like doot, 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 they're not moving. Not to our eyes anyway, because they're in hertz. They're in a very, very slow hertz. So whatever energy propagates from that, you're not visually picking it up, but it still has motion and energy inside of it. You see the motion and energy on the outside in the megahertz and the fantastic range and the colors that you see out of it. You're not seeing the core. But that's the exact reason why you want to do something like this. You don't have quarks going on inside the hertz like you would a megahertz or gigahertz or whatever inside your atoms, okay? Because it's not at that level where it's that fast. And if it did happen in the hertz, you certainly would never see it, okay? But you can possibly see it in the atom, which is a prediction, by the way. They don't even know if they're real, be honest with you, because they've never seen inside of, anything that's an atom. They've only seen the outside shell. But it's kind of ironic. Hold on. It's ironic for one reason. They see the outside of a shell and they think atom. They see the core of the earth, nickel iron, okay? They're not putting the two together. It's a simple shell around the core. The active ingredient in the center is plasma. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, so there's things on the RAV, though, that give you indications of its native hertz range. And the first thing in one of the earliest observations we made before we even fully knew what was going on, with it, there was something I observed, which was a pulse rate. Right, so there was a rate that it would expand and contract in what I called its cavitative state, right? And there was also an environmental flash that would just occur, seemingly at a pretty, regular rate. So it wouldn't illuminate the entire environment as it was running most of the time, except for at this one moment, like that. And when I timed it, what I realized is we were dealing with a fraction of a second flash that's basically caught in one frame at 60 frames per second. And it was occurring ever so slightly slower than one, or faster than one flash per second. So it was running at about 1 hertz, this flash rate, and that's a direct indicator of to the offset beat frequencies of the sum of the whole. So the difference between all the frequencies that are built out were slightly over 1 hertz. And you see that through that pulse rate, and that pulse rate was pretty consistent and pretty regular, and is present anytime you build the most stable RAV forms. Now, the light with the RAV has gotten a lot more interesting since we even released our Plasma Unleashed video on it, because there was something that I observed recently that I haven't even discussed with Nathan or Sean yet. So this will be interesting. But Sean has this video, which is absolutely remarkable. Okay, of this underwater RAV birthing microplasmoids. Okay, little bubbles that are literal plasmoids, and you could see the glowing plasma inside of it. And these little plasmoids are joining together and forming a large bubble, which is void of the plasma. Okay. And the bubble is sustained under the surface of the water, and we've shown this before. Okay. And it has a relationship with the raft and with the arc itself. Okay. But neither can touch it. Okay, neither can touch it. But these little plasmoids that get birthed out will shoot into it, and they do. And it grows and it becomes stable. Okay. And here's the thing, it does eventually pop. Now, because it's not a bubble of gas, there's nothing to rise. Okay. This is a cavitation bubble, this is a vacuum. It looks like a metallic bead under the water because of the displaced water with nothing in it. Okay. It doesn't work the same as, as a bubble of gas does. Well, when these things implode, they put out a massive shock wave. Okay. In the entire system. Really, boom. And what you'll see is the light bends and contorts, with that shock wave, and it will go totally dark when it pops. Okay. And I really had to play it back like dozens of times in hyper slow motion to see it and to get the perfect effect. And I didn't even share it with Nathan yet because I'm not done analyzing it. But if you understand what I'm saying about this whole situation, about how this implosion collapse event of this sustained vacuum object. Now, for what it's worth, I was talking to Phil the other day, and Phil was telling me, he had some connections over at APEC. He thought you and I should talk to them, and I was like, oh well, link us up with it. We'll see if they're cool. Talk to Sean about it and see what's what. And I had shared with him a handful of things, and he's like, oh, I brought it up in the chat. And I was kind of hyping it and saying, hey, you should connect with these guys. And their answer was that the thunderstorm generator and Bob Grenier are the way forward. And I was like, listen, I'm not knocking on either one of them, but I did laugh because I was like, oh, but they can't sustain a plasmoid for more than a fraction of a second with, in intermedium, their plasmoids are gas first and plasmoids second. I was like, ours are actual, underwater plasmoids in this case. And guess what? If it's doing it underwater, this is what I proposed. And you can't see it because there's no, phase difference in the material because, we're working in air at that point. But it's happening in air too. You just don't see it because there's nothing you don't see what it's pushing out. It's like that UFO effect when they say, oh yeah, when it's sustained, you kind of see like the it's warbled around it like a field effect. Well, we do see that with the RAV though. So, you just don't see the plasmoid as it is underwater the same.
Oh, Joe, it gets worse than that. They're using geometries like we're telling you in how you create the harmonics, right? And that's the specific sphere size. But here's the thing that the thunderstorm generator does. It allows you to bullshit your way through everything. You can't see it.
Well, you're mechanically forcing the process. You're mechanically forcing the process.
Just hold on. You can't see shit. You're looking at the same sphere, and if you think the energy's on the outside doing it, you're wrong. Okay? That was a total bullshit video. Let me just tell you the straight answer in this. It allows for too many times for you to take liberties with what's going on. We're showing you exactly what it is, and not doctoring any footage, just letting you see it and evaluate it yourself. They're showing you the same sphere that doesn't do shit, and then they're evaluating the dust that's on the plate on the inside. Although I think it's great sometimes, and it's super helpful, I just don't think it's the way forward. I mean, look, how many times has physics got a bunch of shit wrong? Well, all the time. Why? Because they mathematically calculate things instead of looking at them. We're showing you how to look at them. They're over there showing you a bunch of shit. Okay?
They're
Sorry.
getting. Hold on. I can explain why it's not superior because they're getting their energy off of the implosion event. But what if you don't need the implosion event? What happened? Because all that is some work, some don't. Some are more charged than others. There's inconsistencies, and then it's not captured. It's literally just thrown into the system at that point once it's popped, right? But what we're doing is different because we have a sustained cavitation effect. Okay, and when you
Yeah.
have a sustained cavitation effect, you don't need a full implosion in order for the differential to occur. You're actually going to be able to take off of that implosive effect based on the frequency that it's at, which is happening multiple times per second. So, and you have full control over it in modulation and customization and the ability to scale up and grow it, whereas this is always going to be stuck as a microscopic phenomena of loosey-goosey, stuff. It doesn't ever get density levels that are anything like near what we see. Like nothing even comparable. Like their cavitation bubbles, they're not even glowing. Videos of the RAV shitting out literal stars at a rate that would blow your frigging mind. Okay.
Hold on. I want to clarify something. This isn't a knock on Bob Greenyer. Not in any
No,
way.
it's not.
I think that man is one of the smartest men I've ever seen in my life. And he shows it all the time. And the way he looks into things is fucking amazing. It's using the wrong system. Sometimes a thunderstorm generator doesn't even fucking work. Okay? And I'm sorry, but they were at a live show and that thing took a big shit. I mean, it didn't work for nothing. So look, this isn't a knock on Bob at all. Like I said, I think the world of Bob. It's the machine that they're using is junk. They had an original inventor to this machine. Okay, I'm sure Joe will come up with a name.
I don't know, man. We have a varying opinion on that. I don't know that it's junk. I just think that
it. Okay, for the inventor not to know his machine well enough to fix it right then and there, to not have the balls in the correct harmonics, okay, the spheres, to put it into resonance. There's not too many things you're doing there, okay? You're ionizing the water, okay? You're breaking the molecule apart. You're putting it into a chamber that deals with resonance, okay, and it deals with harmonics. It splits it, puts it into the other side of the chamber, then reassembles it and pushes it out something different. That's not that difficult to do, okay? It's the understanding of what your machine is doing. If he really knew this thing backwards and forwards, give me a wrench, give me a screwdriver, I'll fix it. You go to anything that I build, give me a few seconds, I'll fucking fix it, okay? You can try to destroy something all you want, it won't happen.
Nathan, the thunderstorm generator is the automatic car wash of plasmoid systems. Okay, it's like you drive the car in, and then it goes through. Oh well, we need ionization. All right, you throw UV on it. Okay, well, all right, now it has an ionized bias. Okay, well, it needs to expand and contract. Hook it to a motor that has compression and and stuff. So it forces mechanically the cavitation. We need bubbles. Oh, well, okay, make bubbles in air, make bubbles in water. No, make bubbles in water. Okay, bubbles rise. All right, put it in through the bottom of the tube of water so it makes the bubbles. And then they'll cavitate because of the back and forth. It's like literally driving through the car wash. It's like you drive the car in. All right, they rinse it off. All right, add the soap. All right, they hit it with the like. They're forcing all of this shit to occur, and it's no different at that point than the tokamak, because that's all that's trying to do too, and that doesn't work worth a damn either. Once you realize that you need just simply the right simple things in the right simple proportion, and then sit back and let it happen. All right, and all it is multi-vectoring in ratios. That's all it is.
Yeah,
and and this isn't a pat on my shoulder, but it goes to a level of understanding that you either have or you don't. You see, once I broke down what was going on with Sean's work, and this is, by the way, this is not a knock on anybody around. Like, this is not a knock on Bob Bernier. This is not a knock on Malcolm Mendel. In fact, Malcolm, I think he came out with a video, which I actually enjoyed just the other day, last week. Um, and it's certainly absolutely not a knock on Sean, but like Sean was making these things there, but there was a lot of mystery kind of surrounding what was actually going on there at first. It's like, okay, this happens, but I mean, the resistance, okay, it's just sort of like, why, and I mean, I had taken my time to break it down, really firmly understand exactly what's going on, like, and that's why I was able to take something that is not the same components, not the same parts and pieces, not the same pretty much anything. The only thing that's similar is that it's high voltage, right? And then I was able to recreate the experiment because I just knew those fundamentals that had to be there. And as long as they were there and I were patient because I understand the process, it would build. And then I knew that once it built once, then it builds. That's it. Conditions are set. Sometimes you have to make those conditions. But when you sit there and you create all these car wash type events where you drive it in, one thing happens, the next happens, and then you come out. We all know what happens when you come out the other side of the car wash. Your car is like cleaner than it was, but not that clean. It's like, ah, damn, it's still wet. Ah, damn, there's still suds on the mirrors. Ah, man, I mean, all this shit. So, and that's the idea. If you want things to work good, you have to realize that nature allows for this to occur. Nature,
Easily.
right? Physics and nature and dimensionality and understanding the interactions. Once you know that all the the modes of electromagnetism must be present, which means multi-mode vectoring, okay, and resistance, okay. When you put the right pieces in the right place, it just happens.
So here's the thing, Joe. I think there's a reason they want it this way. You see, physics isn't moving forward. I don't know if you've noticed this or not. Every time I turn around, they're giving you some bullshit thing. They're not moving forward at all. They're stuck. Why? Because the next level of physics is to understand the harmonics, and they will never put that in physics. Okay? They will never acknowledge it. They'll never acknowledge how it works. And that's just the bottom line. So what do they want you to do? They want you to look at something and they want to put a mental picture in your head instead of showing you what it is. I honestly think, man, that whole thunderstorm generator, is it going to work? Maybe. Okay? We'll have to see it when we put it in our own vehicles. But I think it's a cover. It's a cover in physics to show, hey, there's a possibility here, but it's such a gray area, you'll never figure it out on your own. And that's the way they like it. They don't want you to know too much. They don't want you to understand these things. There's limitations when you take money from people. When you take money from some rich individual to get this thing done, there's strings attached. And by God, they're pulling every string in the world to make you not understand a simple subject like this. I have people in the chat already sit there and tell me about quantum again. Quantum's a bunch of BS, guys. A lot of this stuff is crap. And they keep repeating it so that you repeat it. And when you repeat it, then you argue with other people about repeating it. And then because they're not saying the exact language that you're saying, you think that they have it wrong. But that's not the case at all. It was wrong in the first place. They just got you to argue about it. This is how politics works too. They do the same damn thing. As long as you're arguing, you're not understanding. That's the point. By the way,
remember, if the ball is this big and spins this way, then it's this. And if the ball is this big and spins that way, then it's that. And the same people will tell you that everything's relativistic. And then you realize real quick that if you back up from that other one and then you look at it from here, that it's now the same size, the same size and spin direction as the other thing. But don't look at that because it depends on how it hits the sensor. And you just got to remember that all this shit that they're looking at is crashing, an automobile into a wall, and then seeing which ways the parts fly off of it.
What's
And
worse than that? They're showing the after the accident. They're not showing you the crash jump dummy going up to it, going, oh, you know what I mean? They're just showing you the accident afterward, where everything's broken, and they're trying to tell you how to put it back together. I don't know about you, but I couldn't put a car back together after an accident. You know what I mean? No way. You never figure out all the parts the right way. You can get them close and identify them.
The way that they look at it is that the weak force is the bolt that holds your car together, and the strong force is a solid panel that's just a damn solid panel. So if you want to see what's inside the solid panel, you got to rip the damn solid panel into pieces. And then you can sit there and name what you see under the microscope. I mean, listen, to each his own. I find it to be bogus bullshit. I think that there's probably insane physics that occurs as a result of what they're doing, and they know it too, which is the whole sidebar conversation of it. I think that the question then becomes, when you reach those energy density levels and that amount of chaos, at what part of the Planck scale does that fall onto? Because it probably falls off the high end. And what exists on the high end of that Planck scale is probably something that is very interesting physics. But, is that what they're drawing it in from? Because last I checked, everything that they end up creating pretty much lasts for like nanoseconds, and then it disappears back to the hole that it came from in the first place, because it crossed over the threshold of the Planck scale, in my opinion. And all that means, and I'll say it until I'm blue in the face, all that means is that, it became dimensionally out of phase, right? So you fall too low on the Planck scale, you fall too high on the Planck scale, you've fallen dimensionally out of phase. That's it. And one end of it and the other end of it meet in the Ouroboros' mouth and ass tail thing, where it goes, right? It's the same thing. It leads to the same place, So whether it's lower or it's higher, if it's lower than the lowest and the higher than the highest, then you're at that point where it's like this, and what lies on the other side of it is the infinite permeability that exists within us, but outside of us too, right? Because we only could have a portion of that within our dimension at the any given time. The entire four-dimensional object is impossible to be fully present or manifest in 3 dimensions. The best you can get is a shadow. So
yeah, I just want to say, Victor mentioned Griffin Brock, and I tell you, I like Griffin. Old school. He dresses old school. You got a root for a guy like that, man, who wants to do it originally. And I think his X-ray's great. Okay. I could bring down the voltage on that down to 20 volts, 24 volts. Just wind a coil counterwind on the inside, and it gives you high voltage, high amperage. You know what I mean? I don't think he figured that out. That's Floyd Sweet, and people don't read those people, so they don't understand it. But I think Griffin Brock does awesome. I don't know the other guy, okay? The guy that does the Rodin Coil, I don't know him very well. I watched a couple of his videos, and they were cool. Again, nothing against the team going on there. They're just doing it with the wrong stuff.
Yeah, that, and you know what? The reason I said what I said, again, it had nothing to do with either Bob Grenier or Malcolm Mendel, for what it's worth. I want to throw that out there. Everything to do with Phil, who was interested in what I was saying, being like, hey, I think a cool connection could exist here. Him confronting that situation, and the response being, it's this closed-mindedness. It's like teams and Kool-Aid and all this stuff. It's like, you want to know something? I'd rather be trying to figure something out, or trying to work with people to develop something to, get this better understanding, to make this breakthrough, and have somebody else either beat us to the punch another way or something like that, knowing that maybe even something that we've done push that direction, or not. Even if it was just, hey, look at what these guys are doing. That's not the right way. we're going to continue on our path. If that's what the contribution was to keep them from wasting their time down another path, all the power to you, you know. But there's more than one way to skin a cat. Not all of the things that work, okay, are best application across the board. Okay, so if you want to do this, maybe that's the way. If you want to do something else, that's it might work, but so inefficiently that that's not the way. Same concepts and technology configured a different way, much better. There you go. Once you sit there and subscribe to this one train of thought and everything else is wrong, though, you might as well not be in this community at all, because at that point, you know, like at that point, what different are you than anybody else that are shutting you outside of their box? What makes you any different? Nothing.
Yeah. Well, you know, good luck to them in what they're doing. I really hope that they do well and figure out everything in the world based on what they're doing. It'll be a slow, grinding process, I could tell you that. So, yeah, well, it kind of, no, I'll leave that alone. I'll just not go there. Anyway, yeah, I wish them all the best. Hopefully they figure it out.
Yeah, that's right. And honestly, maybe you want to come on. We've listen. I could say I don't want to speak for Nathan. I've watched all your stuff, so I know what you're talking about. Maybe show some interest over here. Come, ask some questions, take a look, you know, and then see if that even helps out your situation. Like, that invite's always been open.
You know, Bob's checked
engineer.
out our stuff a couple of times, man. I don't think he's the other people involved, and I honestly am kind of surprised about the other one. So, like I said, I'll leave it alone, man. Anyway, you know what? It is what it is. We have what we have, and we're going to move forward with what we're doing. They're going to move forward with what they're doing. I think it's awesome. So that's great. I wish everybody well. You know, I don't know how many people you want to give the answer to and everything like that, but you know, whatever. It's up to you guys. I just know how things work, guys. Sorry. And I put them together, and I only do things based on how they're built. And I don't try to put a lot of, you know, anything else into there. That's what makes my channel run. You know what I mean? We build things, we look at them, we evaluate them, and then we go back and evaluate them again. But I have to see it. And Joe knows this, and it's frustrating about me. I need to see it. Because once I see it, yeah, once I see it, it's game over. But until I see it, it's kind of hard to make the leap. And unless you see the signs that are going on and you can acknowledge those signs, it's kind of hard. But then that's what good physics is, isn't it? Yeah, there's parts where you can think it's doing something, but then you have to verify in some way. And if you can't verify it, then who knows, man? Anyway, I'm not going to go into any more of all that. You know, God bless them. Hope they do well. All right, let's change the subject. You know, I think honestly, man, when we get into this, and let's just move the conversation to something else, because I don't think people fully understand this. And I'm just going to say it flat out, Joe, so forgive me. We may have to cut this part off later. You need to break the skin effect if you're going to get into resonance with something. And there's a couple different ways of doing that. You have to put two things together on it, one thing on each side. And then you need a binaural beat to get in between them. And the NWO machine does this. Okay, but it's not exactly as efficient, and a lot of people don't understand why you're doing it and what the beat frequency is for and stuff like that. We know beat frequency is energy amplification, but if you're amplifying anything that's in the body that's in resonance, you're wasting your time. So I thought about this. I have gout, okay, and what it is crystals form in between your bones, and then inflammation, white blood cells go over and they attack it, so inflammation happens. So what happens when I put a piezo disc on either side? Okay? When I put it in the correct beat frequency between the two, then guess what? I can destroy anything I want or make anything grow that I want in that area. Why? Because they're a receiver and a transmitter is what a piezo is. So when you start bouncing things back and forth, you get a certain effect, okay? But that's all you have to do is basically go over to the crystals and find out which one blows them up. That's why Joe's experiment was great, because he was out of resonance, the thing lit up and then it exploded because he wasn't in the right one. And it's hard with a crystal because you got to understand why they're built that way and what they're doing. Each side of a crystal has a different frequency. That's why finding one that's the exact same on every single side or building one that's the exact same on every single side matters. And I'll tell you why. Okay? You imagine them like dots, okay, or like little balls filling up this little portion, right? Angle it slightly differently, they only fill up so many in there, right? Angle it different, and again, they only have so many in there. Well, that's how you're making this thing built. So when you cut a piece of quartz a certain way, it's going to limit the amount that are in there. Well, that's going to change the frequency of it, right? But now if I make each side the exact same thing, guess what? My frequencies are now the same all the way around. Now I can pull them all into resonance together. Some things, man, you need to figure out. So when I say in the human body and stuff like that, start looking at those things. Guys, it's the future of medical. I don't care where you are, it's going to do that. It's already there. They already know it.
Yeah, they already do know it. They already have huge experiments out there that are not they're mainstream studies that are
well, yeah,
it's
it's okay.
No.
So they always say, they're going to kill the C word, okay, in your body, right? What do? They deplete your body with radiation and they think that they're just going to starve it out. Well, it feeds on sugar. So most people, they'll never starve it out because a person's going to go back and eat sugar that day. As soon as they are able to eat again, they're going to drink down a big soda. So you might as well have not done the irradiation. They also have frequencies that break things apart in cells in your body and destroy them. Well, if they know how to destroy a cell, then they must understand what resonance does to healthy ones. Okay? You have to break the skin effect. There's a couple of ways to do it. Coupled capacitance in a field, sit in the middle, build Tesla coils around it, hook them to one to the next to the next. If you're in the center, guess what? You're going to get that value. Now, depends on how you build it, and if you think you can get it into the hertz where you need it to be, God bless you. I know that as you add one to the next to the next to the next, it keeps lowering that frequency as you sit inside of it. You're part of the actual Tesla coil itself now. You have now changed the frequency of that coil. Just like a rod down the center does it every time, your body does the same thing. Put it in a Slayer exciter, it starts to resonate, guess what? With your body. That's why when you get over to the big machine there in California and the Integratron, that's how it was working. That's why it's all screwed up when you go over there and you start putting things on the Tesla coil part and limiting it. That guy screwed it all up. He fucked that whole thing up, man. He, beyond belief, didn't understand the concept of what the guy was trying to do. You're trying to make it go to your body. Now, there's another one. If you put this stuff in mud, so you get in a mud bath, right? And you put your Tesla coil down the rod down the center, not to the number 2. My God, don't ever do that. When you get that, you're breaking the skin effect because of your pores and the way they work. Okay? It's a water exchange, but what happens with water with energy? It structures. You're taking the minerals inside and you're structuring them. Guys, this is the simple understandings of how things really work. Now, I didn't give you any advice here, and I won't. But what I am telling you is there's a way these things work and that you can build them yourself, and you're going to do whatever you want. Okay? I won't ever tell you to get anything near anything. Don't go over 24 volts. It's not a good idea. And stay safe.
Well,
Okay?
here, let's talk about the same thing another way. Okay. How come some compounds are acids and others are bases and then others are neutrals? And what you'll realize is that in chemistry, only one molecule difference is the differentiation between the two? Well, once you realize that each thing has its resonant frequency that it's bringing into the table, in a compound, okay, then it reaches its stability structures the way that it does, and then it has a few things going on. Each element that's in it, okay, has its own frequency, and then it becomes the sum of the whole, okay, in a proportion. But then on top of that, it also has a beat frequency as well. Okay, and what you would find, I believe, okay, if you were to have the resonant frequencies of all the elements, and you were to look at acids and bases, okay, they would fall into the same harmonics. Okay, that's important, right? Same harmonics for acidic substances and alkalized substances would fall into the same harmonic ranges. And what does that mean? Well, it means that when you bring it into certain other materials, right? Well, there would be a corrosive effect, where it would break down the material at hand because it's the harmonic that it falls into is deconstructively it would be deconstructive interference to the native resonance of certain materials and compounds on the other side of things. When they interact with each other, okay, they have the predictable neutralization effect, okay, to a certain degree, right? Now, depending on how strong your acid or strong your base is, right, you may need more of one than the other. You see, this is the offset that really leads to these equalizing events. But what you end up with then is something that is neutral of both of them, that falls out of those frequency bands based on those interactions. See, we don't apply enough physics to chemistry to fully understand the deepest parts of it. Because once you understand that disease is incompatible and incoherent frequencies that are destructive, okay, that leads to imbalances, or that a certain organ, for instance, at the improper frequency doesn't function properly, and things along these natures. Well, we then take medicines, compounds that target specific areas, right? And those compounds then change the frequency in hopes to bring that further into tune. But what you notice is that oftentimes these chemical compounds, they'll go to the target area, but they also hit other areas too, and often have then a kick out bucket list of side effects, right? Because by virtue of throwing that one thing that you were trying to address into maybe a better frequency band where it is more functional, now all of a sudden you've thrown three other systems slightly out, and then you feel the effect of that. And that's why when you see these medicines that address these complex, highly specific, highly targeted type conditions, the side effect list is absolutely massive. This is also why people could be allergic to things at some point in their life and then grow out of their allergy. Right? Like as if their cells decided that, one day it was gonna have an immune response to this one thing, but then decided over time, you know what, let's stop doing that.
Let me tell you this. Rife had it right. And in all the microscopes that he did, just understand this. He took microscopes and you look at the biology inside your body, and he'd be able to tell you which bacteria were affected by frequency. Okay? What happens to each one of them when you bring them out of their frequency? So he had to use some form of resonance in order to do it. But just understand what I'm trying to tell you about what he's doing. He's specifically taking one thing, okay? Whatever it is in the body, and he's put it in this petri dish, and then he's applying resonance to it, and he wants to see what happens to it. Well, if one explodes, but all the other blood cells in the area are just fine, he knows he has a targeted frequency, and now he can change between each one he wants to, right? So now you look at the cells you don't want, the big C word, right? Well, if you want to target that, just simply find out what it is and which one works the best and which one all the rest of the stuff around is just fine. You're going to find a pattern, you're going to be able to write it down, and you're going to be able to do whichever one you want. So if you put somebody in a chamber that covers their entire body or the specific zone you're looking for, you can set that and it'll destroy all of them, right?
Yeah.
And then
Take
you
a
just dig them
biopsy,
out.
right? Take a biopsy, put it on a plate that's hooked up to a scope, an oscilloscope, legitimately,
Mhm.
and start hitting the damn piece of tissue with different frequencies until you see the results you're looking for.
There you go.
You know, once you start to see it spike in high excitation, you realize something. You've hit its resonant frequency band. Now, to destroy something, though, there's two ways, right? So you could either take it in its resonant frequency band, and you could crank up the energy level, right?
Oh yeah, that'll do it.
You could crank up the amps and have it literally shake itself to death, because at that point you're
Like
putting
your
it,
rock.
yeah, you could shake it to death and have it literally dematerialize itself to a certain extent. But what you got to realize is, at those higher energy levels, anything else that's going to be resonant in the area, they're going to fall into it. You could damage that tissue too. So
Oh
there's
yeah.
a fallout. So there's that. But then there's the other side of it, which would be, okay, find the deconstructive interference pattern, of it, which you would automatically have by knowing its native resonant frequency. And then you could sit there and start to break it apart bit by bit, deconstructive interference wise. Probably a lot, like, very effective, a lot more time, probably a little safer, but like, if you need to get rid of something quick, I would say find its resonant frequency and just send it through the roof, because it'll continue in an amplification cycle where it materially will fail. It is, after all, material. So if you want to lead to the material failure, you can do it that way.
Like, this doesn't matter how fat you are or anything else. It's not about the distance in this case.
Nope.
It's simply about the frequency and what it is. And the thing is, you could do case study after case study of the time and energy it takes to do it. And you know what I mean? We're not talking a long time to get rid of this stuff. So I don't think you have to crank it to the roof for anything. It's just a simple process. Okay. You may have to go back several times and do it, but it'll take care of it. Once they get it fine tuned, it'll be like a 20-minute visit and you're done. So yeah, I mean, look, it gets real simple in this whole thing when you start dealing with resonances and stuff like that, because they can act like two ships in the night. If you're not in that resonance zone, you're not picking up the energy at all. You're going to feel dead in the water. And that's what makes it so simple. You got to figure out that zone. And Rife did it. And they took him out for it. They literally took everything he had, probably the best microscope ever, and he absolutely knew what the heck he was doing in order to do it. And he did medical stuff on people, and then that's when they started downplaying and removing it, because they make no money. If you're healthy, you make no money.
See, I think that a big thing that isn't often spoken about is the fact that your nervous system, okay, is the number one key to how well you are just generally. Okay. And the more efficiently your nervous system works, okay, the easier it is for the different parts of your body to fall into these harmonic resonances. And again, it's harmonic because it's not all the same frequency. Okay. But the frequency bands are able to line up to the point where there's physical balance. And what you'll quickly understand, right, is that this is something that they've known for a very long time. And this is why they understood that it's mind, body, spirit, right? And that a lot of the people that were also having mystical experiences through meditation and different things of that nature, they were also caring for their body through different things, whether it be yoga or martial arts, that things like that keep your alignment, correct or being corrected to keep your nervous system at its highest peak level because you needed to have the fast reflexes. Well, if there's signal delay from point A to point B, your reflexes aren't fast. If that signal is degraded as it goes through your body, well, the signal is corrupt by the time it reaches the place that it reaches. Now, whether or not it's corrupt enough to not actually function what you're trying to is not really the question. The question really is, what frequency is it receiving? Because if it's receiving an improper frequency because of a corruption along the way, now that particular area that where that's occurring is going to be more susceptible to dis-ease, right? Dis-ease.
Well, okay, so that could be simply fixed, Joe, if you control the frequencies in each one. It's like dialing a capacitor bank. Okay, turn the dial a little bit, turn the dial a little bit until it matches the right one. You'll know as soon as it pings between it and you get the beat frequency. By the way, to get a beat frequency, one has to be higher. When you see it on your oscilloscope, one has to be lower, but they're inside of each other. It has to amplify that way, but that's why when you see those things like the MWO, they're two different frequencies, but they're in a resonance pattern, yet they have a beat frequency between them. Just throwing that out there, but that takes care of the problem of interference because now you can calculate for it by dialing in your capacitance to each one of them.
That's it. So
because you're going to throw it off with your body as being capacitance.
Look, the funny thing is that in the dynamic, between what we're talking about now, right? But also what we started this off with with their city harmonics, the architecture harmonics, how it applies to energy systems, spirituality. You see, it knows no bounds, you see, because it is everything. It makes it all up. So once you realize it makes it all up and it follows the same set of rules, realistically, if you perfect one, then you have them all. So if your building is the right damn frequencies and right energy interactions between Earth and atmospheric energy, and you have that energy exchange and connection in the right resonance, and then you have multiple structures, well, now all of a sudden your whole land is filled with that resonance. And then when you walk inside that particular mass cathedral, that is the power plant of it that's doing it. You're overwhelmed by that energy, right? And
it's also compressed.
And then you're more likely to then fall into resonance with it yourself, which means that when you start to do things that are a little off, it doesn't feel good. Like you feel, no, so I'm not going to do that. All of a sudden, now it influenced your habits as to what you do and don't do because it's incompatible with this environment that you're living in. Now, all of a sudden, you realize that this whole energy connection thing is going on. You're healthier. People are, kinder. It's probably bringing in a semblance once you have everybody on that same bandwidth, and so is the area. There's a lot more unity because there's an unconscious collective consciousness that's occurring where people tend to have the same sentiments about things all the time. But, whether or not they chalk it up to that or not is secondary to the fact that, well, that's what's happening. You're putting everybody in the same sort of boat and then making them feel the same thing. And their consciousness is kind of existing there too with it, and pulling from the same seed cloud at that point. And this is how then peace and harmony occur, and then you're able to realize that, hey, the plants grow really good here too, don't they? Now, all of a sudden, what happens when you have a population of happy people with an unlimited food supply because the food just grows there great and the animals love to come? Well, all of a sudden, you have the makings of, dystopic society. I hate to say it, but I mean, but the funny thing is all you had to do was set the conditions and allow it to fall into place. But when you try to force the conditions, what happens? It all falls apart because the conditions weren't right to begin with. Because you can't force the conditions. You have to
Yeah.
make the condition. You have to make the conditions and allow it to fall into place. You can't force the behavior, right? And one thing goes right into the next. It's wild to think of how it all really does work absolutely the same. And when you have one, you pretty much have them all.
You just got to understand the principle behind it.
That's it.
Yeah, it's funny. You go into this stuff, man, and you start teaching this stuff, and they shut you down. I don't know how many people got shut down for this kind of stuff. It's interesting because they make fun of you, and they tell you it's not right. And you could do the experiment right in front of them, they'll still say the same thing. I mean, look, they've trained AI to do this. I don't know if you guys understand this. Go try to tell something AI in physics, and it'll act like some physics jackass looking down on you. Okay, you'll see the white coat, you see them looking down on you, you feel about this tall, and they try to tell you something. But then you come around and say, well, here's the experiment, now explain it. And then they start backing up. Dude, this is all bullshit. I'm sorry, man. AI, in some cases, when they understand what you're doing, are good for you. And in some cases, man, they're just trying to suppress stuff. And it's stupid. I show them a RAV. It's pure plasma, right? It turns around and tells me about a plasma ball. Like, are you fucking kidding me? A plasma ball? Dude, I'll hang both your plasma balls, you know what I mean, from down below. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. That really bothers me. Okay? But there's the authority. You know what? You're not. That's the thing, man.
Listen, until you've built a 2 millimeter sun, you know what I mean? It's like I built the sun. It's 2 millimeters. It's this big, and it's got a baby that's even smaller. You know what I mean? Like, until you do that at that scale, and then realize, oh well, but I could make that 2 millimeter sun. I could make that an inch. Oh, that's then you can make it 6 inches, right? It's like, wait a second. I've created the sun. And there's nothing going into it. You know what I mean? There's some current going into it, but more than what's going into it at all is just the conditions.
Oh, yeah. Grok's the worst at it, by the way. I've tried them all, and Grok's the worst. Sorry, Joe. No, by the way, that RAV, somebody said in the chat earlier, I think it was Dennis, it looks totally different in person than it does on the camera.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get ready to be blinded is what you're going to do. Like,
you cannot look at it. You kind of, just like the sun, right? On the sunniest day that you've ever seen. Like, you kind of like look in its direction. You're like, you son of a bitch. It felt good, but no.
It was fun. Dude, it's so funny. Like, I don't think you understand the power that's coming down to this thing.
No.
But
yeah, I've like literally stick welded like 1 inch thick plates together before, and okay, I have a welding mask on and whatever, but what do you notice when you use that type of power, okay, to have that type of result? Well, the first thing is that, it's bright. Okay, and that light is flashing every single square inch around you. Okay, like blinding blue light, every single square inch around you. You got to put welding shields up and it's flashing off the welding shield, and the welding shields are red because it doesn't, it'll filter out that light. It's like, because it's blasting out everywhere. There's no coherence to it whatsoever. It doesn't form anything regularly geometric in any way, shape, or form. Okay, and it's so bright. Also, you can't look at it, but in a totally and completely and utterly different way. Like, no similarity whatsoever. to this, because the truth is, and I know it sounds weird, but when you look at the RAV, as much as it might hurt your eyes, you're hearing in this high density energy density situation that's not here. You're like, I know, like, it guilts me to say it because it sounds weird coming out, and I know it just sounds woo to anybody who doesn't know where I'm coming from. You're looking into a portal. That's what you're looking into. It is opening up a fucking portal, and you are looking into the hole of energy in which is existing in that portal. That's it. Like I've refrained from saying it that way, but that's exactly what it is. That's why it doesn't come out, because it ain't fucking here. It ain't fucking here. It's there. That's why it doesn't come out. That's why the light doesn't bleed into your third dimension, is because you're seeing the light, but the light is dimensionally not here. You're looking through the hole in the fucking fabric that we made. That's the thing. Like, I know it's weird, but it's the truth. Like, sorry.
Yeah, no, I just want to tell dude, you're fine. Dude, don't even worry about it. We're all good, man. I don't know that you ever said anything bad, so I'm good.
And if you did, you're forgiven.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
Christ died for your forgiveness. Today.
Not even there, brother. We're all good. Oh man. Well, yeah, because it's an energy exchange. The center is the portal. So you look at the one side, you see the dark object. You see the other light side on the other object, and the center is the portal. Yeah, it's pretty much the center of your energy exchange. Not a problem with me there. I'm not right there with you, Joe.
I just, like, I know it's just it. Anytime you say the word portal and upper dimension, it tends to, like, get people like kind of like, but like,
I think there's aliens coming out with probes looking for you. They're like, dude, you created a portal. You got aliens coming.
And that's why when I tell you, when you build that thing for yourself and then you actually see it,
yeah,
your words are remiss because it doesn't exist here. That's the, like, you search for the words, you try, but you're like, I don't know, man. It's like, because it's awe-inspiring. You're looking into another fucking dimension. Like, it's like, you gotta, it's like a crystal ball, you know what I mean? Like, you like look into the middle of it and you like see it all, right? It's all there, everything. It's all there. It's like where the information is, It's crazy.
Yeah, do love this stuff.
Yeah, it feels like being blessed. Like, I have no other way.
Oh yeah, it does.
It feels like being blessed. You will, every hair on your body will raise. You will feel familiar and warmth over what you see. That's the truth of it. It's just strange.
Yeah, there's something going on in the RAV, and I think people need to understand a little bit. The people write off camera effects too fast. We were looking at the RAV, and it's a mirror, and it's turned, right? And you're looking at this thing, and people go, oh, it's a camera effect. And then you turn around and you take that same camera, and the thing starts lensing. And then you go, okay, well, then let's change where the cathode is, and it starts lensing around it. And you're going, oh, man, but I didn't move the camera. We go, well, okay, so that's camera's there, lensing, that's a different effect. So you understand automatically this thing can lens out. So that's an effect. Those little bubbles that you see come out of there in different colors, that's lensing for anything. Light does it, from the sun all the time, lenses it. If you create an energy source on the ground to pull that in like a pyramid, it'll lens to that. If you put light through the pyramid like Joe did, it'll lens to that. So we understand there's things going on there, but they always like to say, oh, it's a camera effect. Well, that's lazy.
Well, see, the
and
thing
you didn't
is,
look long enough.
When you take it and if you line it up directly with itself, relativistically, right, it will actually interact with it. Like, so your RAV all of a sudden is having, because it's reflecting that the apparition of the dark side of itself and you're reflecting that back into it, there was already an energy exchange that always existed between it and that. That energy exchange existed quantumly, okay? Behind the curtain happened, right? But as soon as you take it and then you relativistically put it, you know, juxtapose it on top of itself, like superimposed, actually. I mean, both are correct in the sense of how I'm trying to explain it. But they're like superimpose it on top of itself. That reflection of what it's picking up back in, then shooting directly back into the RAV itself, then creates actual real world effect on the RAV that you could observe in both the RAV and the flare. So, and we've seen it countless times. Try to point it out, but it's like,
well, it tells you that there's a mirroring effect going on, which is right because there's an energy exchange. And then there's a camera effect that's mirroring as well. And then there's a lensing effect, which basically directs light. Look, there's 3 different effects that go on in there, and you have to understand all of them, and you have to appreciate all of them to get it. Joe, you want to see something really cool?
no.
No. Just no. Okay. So why am I showing this? It's because I want you guys to see something in this. This is basically you're taking sound and you're bouncing it off the top board there, but then you're doing it with a convex mirror and you're doing it with different lens colors, okay? So they put red and they put green in there, and you're showing the fields and what's going on. Now just understand this, I ordered one of these mirrors. It's about 18 inches in diameter, and it should be coming in here in the next couple of days, and we're going to start seeing this effect. Now, we got it for the Gravity Flyer, we got it for the RAV, so we'll be able to see all the energy zones and what's going on. Here's the interesting part about what I'm looking at here. They're changing the color of lens to show you the density in the atmosphere. Now let's look at what Ken Wheeler did. He put mouse juice, which is like a gear oil, in with his blood. He trapped it in a lens form, which is basically 2 sheets of glass, and real thin ones, by the way. And then he was able to see the field. So now let's look at what they do in National Treasure. Remember the glasses that they had? And they start flipping them, and you see the different colors going on? Now think about how that all works together and how you would change a lens. Find a reactive material that goes in there. Blood's reacted like iron, okay, in your blood. So it shows a magnetic field. How do you interact with other fields in the environment? What are they and how do you interact with them? That's what's going to become important. You find a medium that they work in. It's about viscosity and how it blends out into them. Now you take a color spectrum and which ones you want to see inside of it. Now you're going to be able to identify everything. There's another point in this I want to show because I can't show the video. But as they show these zones, you see that you can get anti-gravity inside of them with the sound and stuff. But we're telling you the same thing. It's a harmonic zone that they're dealing with right now. It's bouncing back on top of each other. You see all the balls line up. When they start to line up together, they start to spin. The one in the center that has 4, it tends to spin as soon as there's motion. So if you bring the motion in and out like this, that thing will spin all day. Just so you understand that. Or tap on the top of the plate, I'm sure it'll go woo all day. Just understanding the zoning and what goes on in here. This is going to be some part that's going to be a big thing in the channel that we're going to start to look at. And it's going to be absolutely amazing, but you can easily see the patterns and what's going on. By the way, when things show up in a dark zone, they have structure. Just understand that. If you see this experiment and you see a dark zone in between it along with these 2 colors, that dark zone still had structure. Therefore, there's energy there. Because if there was no energy, there'd be no structure. Therefore, it's just out of your light spectrum, and they haven't figured out how to see it yet. What do you think space is?
Well, then, yeah, right. And that's the thing is there's our spectrum of light, the human being spectrum, which is limited.
Hmm.
and directly in the center of the spectrum, right? We know that infrared and ultraviolet both fall off of our spectrum, but exist in terms of the spectrum. But the thing is that the spectrum is finite. And that, again, is deterministic by the Planck scale. So whenever you see transient light non-interactive, it's non-manifest. It's non-manifest three-dimensionally. And the interesting thing is that because of the Planck scale being the root cause of our three-dimensional existence, when light goes transient, which is almost immediate, and it's not manifest, it dips out of our Planck scale, okay, and is non-detectable, immediately reaches instantaneously all places that it'll ever be in terms of its direction of propagation. And why we believe that there's a speed to it is because of the Planck scale, because our dimension needs to be able to catch up to the fact that it's already there. Our dimension works at a different rate, at a specific rate, right? And a variable rate. And no matter what that variable rate is, it still is at a constant speed. Why? Because it was always there. So it doesn't matter what your time dilation rate is or your measure of time is, because those are the confines and the constructs of the dimension that you're measuring it from. So you perceive that it takes that much time, and no matter what time dilation you measure it, and it's the same. And that's the proof that it's always there instantly as soon as it's emitted. And then you can go as far as saying, well, yeah, but all you did to admit it was open up some kind of portal of something that was always there anyway, always, which means that which then it starts to get really, really woo, really, really fast. But the whole point is that as soon as you shine a laser, right, that laser is everywhere that it could ever be, and wherever it interacts and wherever you see that dot, and however long it took to traverse from point A to point B was only a dimensional constraint, a bottleneck, a differential in the time experienced between dimensions. Because don't think 4D plus doesn't have time. You see, we perceive it as not having time from a three-dimensional perspective. But they too have a passage of what would be considered time, of motion, that then is constrained by the dimensions and the pressures above it. See, because that's how dimensions work. Like every dimension that is lower than us must follow our rules, more or less. But higher dimensions don't necessarily have to follow our rules.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to point this out, Joe. He said he did the RAV, right? He said it maxed out his magnetometer at 150 UT. There's more of this thing going on. It's awesome. Yeah, anybody who builds this thing, by the way, says the same thing, man. Maybe not the phone thing, but they'll start telling you, man, this thing is amazing. So
It's a powerful magnetic field, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's where the compression comes from.
We didn't even have to force it into a donut. Crypto's on his way back, man. Meeting up with my wife to come here, man. Right on, brother.
About time.
We have a battery. We're gonna take all the oranges from my orange tree and make it, and it's awesome, brother. You guys have seen it here on the channel and stuff. So now we're gonna finalize that, man, and run it. We're gonna put a charge into it and see how well it does, and then run it before, then put a charge into it, just like you would charge saltwater battery, and see if it doesn't build up in there, man. Totally interesting experiment. We came up with it because we decided potato power was awesome. So then we took copper and zinc and put it into the potatoes, and we got energy. The problem was there was no capacitance value in it. So in building the things in layers, or get capacitance value. So totally awesome, man. Look forward to that. We got some other things going on too, but we'll let you know. By the way, the movie Paul was funny as you know what. Yeah, it was. I love that movie. When he fixes her eyeball, man, that was awesome. So yeah. He was invisible and had that little cowboy hat. Dude, that movie was so awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah. All right, man. It's been 2.5 hours, Joe.
I think we've had a productive episode today. I would say.
I think it's good, man. I hope people learn from it. So,
Something.
right on. I just want to shout out Ulysses here, man. He gave us 2 stickers today, man. Gave us 40, I believe it's quid or Euro cash, or I don't know. It's just awesome.
Pound sterling.
Love you, brother. Thank you very much, man. I want to mention also Traveling Fools channel will be on there tonight. We're talking about the going back to the moon. Hey, Joe, they just barely got out of orbit and already broke the shitter in their craft.
Oh man, I tried to watch an update on it, but I was so bored by what they were talking about, the dumb questions that the reporters were asking, that I literally couldn't get through it.
I just thought it was funny.
I was like 5 minutes into the thing. I didn't even get to the shitter being broken.
They're calling the splash plumber, man, to get their crap open working in the ship.
Well, if they stop using all that boom tech shit, they could just open themselves up a portal to throw it in, and it'd be fine.
That's when you need the portal the most, huh?
That's what you need the portal the most for. It's just like, just get it out the bubble. Get it out the bubble. It's sort of like being out to sea on a ship and just pumping your dookies into the ocean. You can just pump it into space, and then they'll be like humans eventually somewhere.
Well, what I find funny is this time there's no words about the Van Allen belt. By the way,
I never realized.
They're not saying any word about it. No NASA guy standing there telling you about it. It's just we're going
during damn near peak solar maximum. On top of that, you know what I mean? Like, just like that. Don't talk about it.
Dude, they are. Oh man, it's just funny because here are all these excuses. We don't know how to build it. We don't know how to do this. Oh, but by the way, we made it better. We gave them a bigger capsule and we gave them a cropper. Great. Okay, you don't know how to do it. Yeah, now that excuse is out the window. Okay, what's next? Okay, so because you used up all your excuses now when they fly by it.
Whatever. It's cool they're going back to the moon. I didn't even realize it was happening until it did. But that's like the same as when you were talking about all those guys before. You're like, oh, Floyd Sweet and this one and that one. I'm like, yeah, I've heard the names. I don't fucking know what they talk about though. I have no idea about any of this stuff. I'm literally an idiot. I'm just an idiot that looked into the sun portal and got answers. Like, what do you want from me?
Oh man, you got to know them if you're going to build them. So, all right, guys, I just want to say thank you to everybody out there, man. Look forward to seeing Traveling Fools tonight, man. Talking about some NASA stuff. It's going to be hilarious. But Mike's coming on in just a little bit over at Faraday Research Channel. And then we'll be back next week. I'll probably be doing a Monday show this week. Guys, I've been out for health reasons for a little while, so hopefully those will clear up. I think we're going to make the Monday thing every other week and just see how everybody's doing on Monday, man. I don't think I'm going to do it every week. Sorry about that, but I got a lot of work in front of me now that I'm getting healthier. We got that mirror coming in, and then we have all the stuff coming in from Lightspeed, Richard. He's getting all that equipment ready for me. So I'm going to be bogged down, man, just tying things together, putting it all up. I rebuilt my gravity flyer. That's ready to go, man, so we could do the testing on that, see the fields on that. I'm setting up the RAV experiment. I'm trying to do a double RAV so that we can get all the information from it along with a single RAV And then with all that equipment around it, man, I just want to be able to switch out experiments and just keep going all day long on doing this stuff. So I have to take the time to set it up. So it's going to be kind of hit and miss for a while on that Monday thing. But Fridays will always be good. We'll be here all the time.
Oh yeah,
So
and yeah, Fridays are always a short thing, and I know that the next episode of Plasma Unleashed was a little delayed because of the same reasons. You know,
my
just
fault.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's not a matter of fault. It's just a matter of you know, we all need to be well to get our parts together. So we'll have that coming up soon, and keep an eye out for it. We'll try to put a notice up a couple days in advance to kind of give you guys a little hype on it. So
Right on, man. All right, guys. Have yourself a great night.
peace and love.
The old man will. The old man will. The old man will. The old man builds. The old man builds is broken in the head. People not seeing reality has put them in the red. Where conscious and spirituality been stricken from the norm and replaced with the ignorance of basic magnetic form. The geometry of God keeps running through his head. That's what makes old man builds broken in the head. The old man builds. The old man builds. Spheres of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to instead. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. Fears of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to extend. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. Fears of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to extend. The old man builds.